Oh, it didn't have this? So it didn't have the appendix to their, oh, and all the specifics. Right. So that needs to be out to the public before. Probably should have. But you're here, but then it's going to be pretty late on the agenda. Yeah, right? It's at the end.
So, I mean, we could just be here and I thought we'd just do a small presentation.
I was just thinking of next time, we could put it earlier and then Maria wouldn't have to stay all the way all night. Because if we stick to the agenda, she's going to be here for hours.
Whatever way you want to try to do it, where
I'm gonna go through a little bit and bottle.
go over.
Hi, John. Hello.
Do you want to move it up earlier in the agenda? Why don't we do that? Just go through everything.
Long attachment.
Say,
Like 125.
I outlined all the things that you explained in the staff report.
Did you read it?
Formula we're operating.
That conclude my stuff.
What it uses.
There's no meeting. Oh, it's over.
Unfortunately, you got left out in the packet, so we can't formally pass it tonight, but then
Yeah, exactly.
say, yeah, well, that's what we intend to do. So we'll try to move it, what, first in new business maybe? Instead of the last? How's that sound? Okay.
So are you giving a report out of closed session? Usually one. Clay? Yeah. Except the claim. Right.
We ready?
Allow.
Sherry, are we ready? Please join us.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we will call ourselves to order and take the roll call, please, City Clerk.
Note for the record that all council members are present.
And we're going to next look at adopting the agenda, but I'd like to add the first item would be the report from closed session from the city attorney, if that's okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to report out the claim that was considered by the council was allowed and no other actions were taken.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda with one change we were just talking about.
Which was?
Item number C under new business. We'd like to move that to make it the first one rather than the last.
Make it item A.
Make it item A rather than C. For a couple of reasons.
Mr. Mayor, also, would it be possible to flip B and A?
Flip B and A?
Yeah, because anticipating A is going to take longer.
Okay.
So C
so what? So basically, we're
CAB cab. Yeah, exactly. We're flipping completely.
okay.
So
CBA.
CAB.
CBA.
CBA.
CAB cab.
B and this.
Take a cab.
Oh,
Okay.
So what? So which one is going to take longer? I think.
The one Bay Area.
I think that'll take longer. So you want to make that?
Make that C.
Make that.
Yeah.
That's C.
The
Okay.
CBA.
All right. So we just reverse the order in effect.
So it's just switching C and A.
Yeah. Right. Right. But
Okay.
you end up ABC from the bottom.
So it's CBA.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
CBA. Right.
CBA. Okay. With
Okay.
that, I'll move approval as amended.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We got an agenda. So the first thing we have on the agenda is a proclamation, before we get to oral communications. There's a reason why there's a whole bunch of people out there with these fluorescent shirts. And that's because an important week is coming up, and namely Public Works Week. And we have a proclamation to recognize the role of Public Works in municipal activities. And we have the opportunity to recognize our own Public Works employees, many of whom are here this evening, and we appreciate your coming. But one of the things that the proclamation points out is that Public Works does a lot of things that people don't necessarily pay that much attention to, except when they go wrong. People don't think too much about, water coming out of the faucet that's clean and safe, and flushing the toilets and doesn't come out in the neighbor's yard, and walking down a sidewalk that's safe. We're going to talk about that more tonight. Driving on a street that doesn't break the springs on your car. Maintaining all the landscapes and all the park facilities. Whenever I run into anybody and you ask them, so what do you think about Public Works? And they say, so what do they do? And it's always astounding to me that it's the fundamental infrastructure that they take care of, that nothing else would really be possible for modern life without all that well-maintained infrastructure. And recently some of us have had some tours of, like the water and sewer system, which is these days an extremely complex, modern, highly technological facility. It's not just pouring things down a pipe by gravity anymore. It's much more complicated than that. And you need a lot of technical skills to do that right. And you need a lot of engineering skills and a lot of very good technical skills, and that's what we have in the Public Works Department. And believe me, the council is very much aware of that, and we're really very appreciative. And I'm sure whenever any of the citizens think about it, they're also very much aware of it. So we are very happy to proclaim May 19th to 25th as Public Works Week. And I guess we're just doing it in Brisbane, but I imagine that every city around the state is doing that, maybe around the country.
There's actually been a request, yes, sir, for it to be done nationally.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So anyway, I'm very happy to make this proclamation on behalf of the city and the council, and I'm very happy to recognize the Public Works team. I don't know whether I'll turn this over to whomever is the appropriate leader of the Public Works group, whoever would like to take that role. I don't know whether other council members would like to say anything, and maybe the Director of Public Works would like to say something too.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, if I can, if the council's made their comments.
No, I'd like to hear from the Director.
Sure. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, good evening. Thank you for proclaiming this, and as we've noted on many times before, we're one of those departments that are a complaint-based department. We don't hear from folks unless things are going wrong, so we really like it when we don't hear from you. Not that we don't love you, it's just that it tells us we're doing our job well. It was interesting that you remarked earlier on the people in the audience, because as you look out here in this corner of the room right now, you have all but 4 of your Public Works employees seated out here. And I think that's really particularly significant for me, because a number of years ago you had 13 full-time employees doing your operations and maintenance, and today you now have 8. As far as your engineering division, a few years ago you had 4. You now have 2. And I think that the level of service has been absolutely remarkable, the way these people have pulled together, the amount of effort that they've put in, the cost savings that they've done, the way that they've continued to do their jobs to the very best. And as I've told the citizenry at large on a number of occasions, there's nobody more frustrated than we are when the resources just frankly aren't there for us to do our jobs, because we take a great amount of pride in you're not calling us. We like to be lonely like the old Maytag repairman and his basset hound. One of the things that we have done within the last year that I thought I would point out particularly to the council is, because we've had to downsize so much, is we've realigned some of the duties a little more. We used to have enough people where it seemed to make sense to have a separate engineering division, to have an operations and maintenance division. We've now done a bit of combining there on those, and I'll just kind of briefly explain that to you. In years past, you had a civil engineer who was responsible primarily for your water system. In time since, Jerry Flanagan, who's seated back here, give us a big raise. Jerry, who I think most of the council members know because he took you on the water and sewer system tour, recently been promoted to senior civil engineer. He now has responsibilities for your water systems, your sewer systems, your storm drain systems. He's assisted in that effort by Keegan Black, seated right next to me here. Keegan took over when a longtime Brisbane resident and not so short time employee retired from here when Dale Allen retired. So Keegan is now working for Jerry, and those people are responsible for everything utility. When it comes to everything that's not utility, when it comes to buildings and grounds, when it comes to the road, the person responsible for that is Karen Kinzer, who's seated to my left, a long-term employee. She's been a senior civil engineer for a number of years here. You know Karen most notably from having been the project manager on the Tunnel Avenue Bridge for the Tunnel Avenue on the City Hall remodel. And also from tonight's agenda, it looks like she's got at least 6 items on here, I think, from all of the resolutions that we have related to Sierra Point and the 3 notices inviting bids. So it's kind of the Karen Kinzer show a little bit on the agenda. Karen works very closely with Joe Friars. Joe's seated over to the far left there. Joe came to us and was originally a member of the Turf and Landscape team. You saw him all the time, very proudly taking care of the athletic fields and the recreational field we have here at the main park. In the very sad passing and unexpected passing of one of our long-term employees, Don McClyman, last Thanksgiving, Joe stepped up, and he's now the interim team leader. We're giving him a crash course in managing purchase orders and managing contractors and doing everything but what he'd become so capable and efficient at. So he and Karen are doing that. So really for those people that want to call in, sometimes you don't always have to call in and talk to me. You could certainly talk to Jerry and Keegan if you need to talk to somebody about utilities, or you could talk to Karen and Joe if you have non-utility issues. And with that, we'd be happy to take questions, or we'd be happy to receive a proclamation.
Do you want other council members like to say back?
All right. Thank you guys for being out there. I mean, you're usually the first line of defense, you know, even before the police department or fire department in emergency situations that aren't specifically police and fire. And I said, you know, a lot of people don't realize that on what you really do. And, you know, thank you very much for a good job and working hard, even being shorthanded, and haven't had a pay raise in a long time. And, you know, I mean, we do appreciate the hard work.
Jerry?
I'll just repeat that sentiment. I think that we all know how much we value your services, so thank you.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys. You guys do an awesome job. I mean, the town, you would never know that you are short-staffed the way you are today. When you look out at our town, it's beautiful. The community feels safe, and you know, I haven't seen any notice of a decline in my quality of life from when you guys were at full staff. So you guys have done a tremendous job. You know, I also really appreciate you guys helping me on my little pocket park project. And I know sometimes, you know, it's a little hard to go get me some broken concrete when you're busy doing your other stuff. But you know, you guys have done it. And you know, once we finish that project, I'm going to work really hard, you know, with the council and with staff to try and, you know, get community members to take ownership of that park, to help maintain it, so that isn't another thing that's put on your plate. But I just want you to know that I really appreciate you guys helping me, you know, assisting me with that effort. So thanks, guys.
I did have one more thing, Mr. Mayor, and that is, you know, what's really nice is to see guys that grew up in town here that are taking care of it. And Jerry Wilkins, you know, you and I grew up together, and God, Keegan, your dad and I grew up together, and Dustin, your father and I grew up together, grew up with Jerry. So it's really nice to see that second generation too coming up, that you guys know this town, you know everything about it, and you're working here, and I really appreciate to see that. So, and it's not taken away from you guys that didn't grow up here, because I know you're doing a great job too, but I just wanted to acknowledge that. So.
Why don't the team leaders go up and Keegan, why don't you and Joe go take the proclamation from the mayor?
Okay. So now we move on to oral communications number 1. And 3 people that I recognize here. First is Dennis Bussey.
Good evening, Consul Dennis Bussey, Brisbane resident, about 35 years. I'll keep it in. First thing I want to say is to Hal, I'd like to wish you good health and happiness in retirement. It's very important. Keep yourself active. If you get bored, come see me. I wish you the best. Okay, this morning Mr. Lentz rang my doorbell. I'm sorry. May I call you, Cliff? I was getting ready to go to the doctor. So my wife had a talk with you. But the park is a shame. Someone tore it up Saturday night. And I had to rethink. I came home. Normally I would have been over there for blood. But I didn't get home till 9 o'clock. And I drove up visitation, and it was dead as a doornail on a Saturday night, which is not like the old days. So when I got out of my car, and I have bad hearing, I could hear loud music. And I'm looking for a boom box or a teenager or someone in their car. There weren't any, but I looked across to the park, which was lit up, and that's where the sound was coming from. So when I walked through the park, as Mr. Lentz did this morning, after he left, I went looking for you. I walked through the whole park, and there's, for lack of a better word, plastic-colored cocktail beer glasses all over the park, as you saw. There's a 2x4 that was used to get. It's a shame. The rocks thrown, but I went down to the back door, and there's a big box full of wine bottles, and it was Cinco de Mayo. My wife said, it's Cinco de Mayo. Now, I've never heard of Cinco de Mayo having a church service. It's usually loud and boisterous. So I'm assuming that whoever rented that, and hopefully you guys get a deposit, and in the past I've suggested to the police department, to the beat cop, they should be aware when that building's rented out and whatever its ending hours are, the cop should cruise before closing. So for what that's worth, that's who I'd suspect that caused that damage. And I'm guessing it was a Cinco de Mayo party. My wife said it was the 5th. So whatever that's worth. And I know I've talked to police in the past. There was a van that was there for probably 10 days, a neighbor, and every window was busted out of it. Glass everywhere. And the cops were there. And I talked with them. And I told them that park is a danger at night. I've been looking at it for 33 years. I know every square inch of it, and I've gotten nowhere with City Hall with my complaints in the past. It's so frustrating, it's unbelievable. So I've given up, and Cliff knows some of the details on it. But I've seen drug use in there. You can smell it. I've seen homeless in there. I've seen, you know what hoodies are? They're the punks. Put the hoods up, hanging out as you come into the park on a hard left in the middle of those stupid tall trees, which should be short and light. And so that's not good. Beer cans, booze, bottles. And I hate to admit it, but I belong to the seniors. So I've gone down that rear staircase 100 times, either delivering food or helping out, and when they barbecue. So I'm very familiar with the park. And that's when I've noticed all the debris. And the timers have never been set. If you have a record of how many times I've called poor Diane, all it takes is some yo-yo to set a clock twice a year at daylight savings time. There's no excuse. I was here at City Hall Saturday, hot, beautiful day, went to the dog park and the sprinklers are gone. People have got they're standing back against the wall to not get wet. How does this happen? The Visitation Main Street, the street lights are on in broad daylight for years. And I quite frankly don't find any excuse, because I've been here when there was staff assistants to assistants to assistants. The chief of police, 3 commanders, 2 sergeants. So I see no excuse whatsoever for anything deteriorating. And I got that word from my charming wife in a Brisbane. It's a beautiful word. How does this allow to happen and deteriorate? I don't care if there's 1 person or 1,000 on staff. And I wanted to get that off my chest. Timers, sprinklers, garbage cans. I, without exaggeration, will say 50 times on Thursday morning when they pick the garbage up at my house, that block, Mendocino, the garbage, the big blue ones, there's 2 of them, they're left out. They fall over. Cars hit them. They're taking 2 parking places. I easily have 50 times taken those 2 garbage cans, one at a time, all the way down the curving path to the back fence. And so finally one day I said, this is baloney, man. So I would take them from the street, usually had to pick them up because they were knocked over either by the kids going to and from school or a car, and I just put them inside the non-existent gate. And of course there's no level spot, and this is something I try to mention to people, there should be an area for those cans. But it's just, there's no excuse for that, man. I'm a retired businessman, and we prided ourselves maybe in too much perfection. But I'm sorry, I just have to get it off my chest. And particularly, there is no chain of command from the staff to my right to the person that calls. You know, in my day, if there was a problem, it would get to me, I would instantly be on the phone to remedy it, to say we acknowledge it, we heard you. But there's never been a recognition back to me, except for Mr. Holstein, who shouldn't have had to, but he's called me on a couple occasions, concerns, and one was about the grammar school safety of the big trucks. Another time, a lengthy letter, I should have framed it, and I have to say Mr. Stewart has gotten back to me, but through someone else, that he's gotten back to me. And I think that should hold true for anyone that's in position to my right. They have a responsibility more than giving orders. They have a responsibility to follow back down and track up a complaint that's been phoned in, mailed in, or walked in. And I'll finish it with this subject anyway. There was a sewer leaking up the street for years. Even our mailman said, Dennis, I'll go and witness this. I had a neighbor photograph it who's high tech. I must have called the city 20, 30 times. One of the city inspectors was across the street inspecting. I pointed out, I said, look, 100 feet over there, that's raw sewer coming out of the street. And the guy says to me, how do you know it's not a spring? Chihuahua. So finally I took pictures down, called down. I went down, I called City Hall one night to Diane's number, and I said, I'm calling about the sewer again. I will be down there tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock and be sitting there till someone gives me an answer on that sewer that leaked for years. And the very next morning, ringing my doorbell, Keegan. It took that. It took the threat of me having to go and sit down at City Hall till I got an answer from somebody. That should have never happened. And my street, Mendocino, if you don't know, it's a thoroughfare for the kids. And I've asked the kids over the years, for 35 years, why are all you coming down Mendocino when the shortest distance between 2 points? And I loved it. The answer is your hill's not as steep. That's right. And it's wider. You can run it, man, at that age. So if any of this made sense, I think you need a subcommittee for a chain of command for a PR, regardless of how ridiculous is the complaint, and I'm probably known as a wacko anyway, but it's just good business sense and common courtesy. And that's it on this subject, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.
I think Dolores wants to talk about a similar thing, right, as I understand it. So, Dennis, we'll give a response together, because Dolores has similar concerns.
Okay, I have to concur with Dennis, because when I worked at the library years ago, I requested that be locked at night, but the police said, no, they weren't going to be bothered doing that bit. At night, there's a lot of shenanigans going on, because I used to hear it, and that's why and one night someone jumped over our fence. I think all of you know that our backyard is right in their backyard. And I thought it was important you should lock the fence, but they didn't want to do it. So anyway, my presentation. This is...
Wait till she's finished.
I'm sorry.
No. Dennis wanted to add, but I said,
Okay.
wait till you're finished.
This is what I found in my backyard when we came home from being away for the weekend. And this isn't the first time. Now, I don't know if Stuart would be interested. Poor Stuart, I'm sorry. Because Stuart's never been here. But, yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm not a good off-the-cuff speaker, so I had to write it down. Okay, we have a problem, all of us. For years, we've had to monitor our yard as it's right in back of the community center yard. Every time there's a party at the community center, I don't mind the music or the kids making noise, but I do mind that they throw stuff into our yard. The police, and they have been good in responding to our calls, they want us to call when there's a problem. But the problem is, by the time we call, the kids are gone. I guess I've made the mistake of trying to take care of this problem instead of calling the police, because I don't want to be known as a constant complainer. Now, recently there hasn't been much going on at the rec, because I guess they were cleaning the floors or doing something down there, and then they're doing the yard thing. So it's been quiet for a while, but all hell's breaking loose again. I have asked children not to climb the fence and not to toss items into our yard constantly. There have been numerous times I went over and talked with the person who was having the party to get the kids to stop. I've called the public telephone in this building and asked anyone answering to keep the kids from throwing things into our yard. They've always been very nice and cooperative, which I appreciated. The problem also occurs after school and when classes are being in this building. I've talked with members of the recreation department staff, and Jim Skeels, of course he's gone, about this problem. I suggested a notice to be included in the rental contract for those renting the building. They need to monitor their children and to respect properties. I suggested a bench be removed so kids could not have easier access to toss things into our yard. I suggested a sign to be put, keep off the fence, and I don't know if a staff member stays in the building when the party is going on, because years ago, when we had a party there, there was a staff member there monitoring everything. Of course, we weren't that wild, you know. So, anyway, all I ever got was, yeah, just call the police, just call the police. And I call this passing the buck. How can I call the police when we're gone for the day? When we come home yesterday, we cleaned up our yard. Then I walked around the corner to this yard and found the area obviously under construction. Someone is working hard to transform this area. It looks pretty good. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like when it's done. But I also found there was a bench right up to the fence where kids could stand and throw stuff in our yard or look in our yard. I don't mind kids looking in our yard. And now they have a better view into our backyard because it's provided by the cement blocks that are piled up. A child can stand on them to toss blocks or whatever, rocks into our yard. There's a lot of rocks of that cement particles in that box. It's obvious that rocks and other debris in which we had to pick up in our yard came from this area. So who's watching the children while the adults are enjoying the party? Who's going to pay for our back window if it's broken? Because I noticed a dent in our wood where it's obvious a rock hit it, and it was only 2 inches from the bottom of our window. So I guess the city would pay if a rock went in there. I don't know. I'm tired of worrying about it. I'm tired of talking, calling, and cleaning up chicken bones, rocks, paper items, balls, spaghetti, cups, etc. After years of trying to be a good neighbor and not bothering the police, I am done. I need and I want some action, a remedy to this ongoing problem by the city and or the recreation department, and I thank you. And I hate to come complaining like that, but I've had it. It's been going on for too many years.
Okay, understood. Dennis, did you want to add to what Dolores said? Yeah.
There's one great advantage of being old like me. I do forget things, but I can say what I want. I don't care what anybody thinks. But I want Cliff to get a star because I've seen him over there working so hard. I mean, shoveling, wheelbarrow, big as he is. He's worked as hard as anybody I've seen, and I want that on the record. I appreciate it. I know you're doing the best you can. You should have rang my doorbell 14 months ago, and we've discussed that. But he really deserves credit, and he's followed through on it. I now know he has 4 different cars where he parks anywhere he wants, and no directions, no signals, no seatbelt. We've discussed that. Twice on the cell phone talking.
Now you're ratting them out.
Yeah, so I suggest you get 4 signs made and put them on a steering wheel. But it's you consider locking the gate. One night I could hear the woman. Some guy was pounding on her. This was years ago when I was young. By the time I got out of the house, ran across the street, they had vanished. So that's another thing of violence. But Cliff, really, you worked really, really, really hard, man, and I admire you for that. And it makes me mad that I can't help you. I would love to. I'm not lazy. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.
So, Michelle, do you want to talk about the same item, or?
No,
Okay, so let's respond to this item, and then we'll get.
I'm sorry.
You want to add something?
My daughter said I should have said, it was a communion party yesterday.
Not Cinco de Mayo?
Yeah, Sunday, it was a communion party. And we had a person come to feed a cat, and he said he sat there for 45 minutes after he told him to stop throwing stuff. But then he had to leave. And then they gave the rest of the stuff. He even told the people.
Could you come up to the mic? Sorry. Otherwise, nobody can hear you because it's being televised.
Saying that he went over to Midtown, and some people from the party came in, and he asked them, will you please tell the kids to quit throwing stuff over? But, of course, when I brought them home, there was all this stuff in the backyard. It was worse than when he was there, because it was just rocks. But when we got home yesterday, it was candy and all this other stuff. So, and this has been going on for years, like she said.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean if it's a party, like he was saying, or after school, or just whenever kids are back there. And I've smelled pot, them smoking. I don't care about smoking pot, but I mean, if I know the police don't like it, but I've smelt it before. So I know, kids are back there having fun.
Okay. Okay. So I guess unless Cliff, you wanted to weigh in before they have to say anything.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I have to take some responsibility. Actually, I'm going to take all the responsibility for the condition that the park has been in for the last year. I took on this project with Rebuilding Together. It was one of those things where you try and do something nice for your community. You see that there's a possibility of transforming something that used to be really nice back in the day, but has gotten a little worn. And sometimes I might take on something and I don't anticipate how big it's going to be, But you know, I like to go for it, and that project was, you know, pretty daunting, to say the least. But you know, and I think I got a little burnt out, you know, during the process, and I took some time off. And then once I kind of cleared my schedule, got some more energy, you know, then I've gone back into it. And luckily, we've had some great volunteers, not only in Brisbane, but, you know, through Rebuilding Together, and of course, you know, even Romero. I mean, he's a public works guy. He's gone out there on his day off. You know, Randy has been out there, you know, providing advice, and you know, I mean, you know, a couple of guys like Mike Glenn and Paul Gallant, you know, very recently, you know, have provided that expertise that I needed, you know, to help keep the project going. And we are so close right now. You know, it's unfortunate that there was that party. I mean, in the last several days, I must have put in at least 20 hours, and we got it all dialed in, you know, laid down the sand, we compacted the sand, all the walls were set in place. We just needed this one section right in the beginning of the entryway that needed some more sand. And I saw, you know, someone in town walking their dog, and I said, "Oh, you gotta check this out. You know, we've been working on this park, and you know, it'd be great for your kids." And I walked them over there and saw the condition of it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, how could someone do this?" But you know, I'm actually relieved that it was people from the outside that did it, and not Brisbane folks, because you know, even when it was in kind of this disrepair, I mean, no one really messed with the site. They knew it was under construction, and here you make it all nice and pretty, and then someone comes along and does what they did. But it also showed me that there are still some things that need to be done with that park to not only make it safe, but to make it long-lasting. And so I've coordinated some volunteers from this organization called P90. They you know, get some folks who you know, been in trouble with the law, and you know, drug abuse and things like that, and they come and they give back. And so these guys have been helping tremendously. And so I've coordinated with them this Wednesday, and so I'll be out there, and we're gonna clean the site completely, not only just the rocks and the broken concrete, but also the other debris. And then we're going to fill in the areas where it'll be dangerous, and then we're going to get mortar, and we're going to mortar underneath every single top layer of stone, so that when kids walk on that wall, because you know they're going to walk on it, kids are kids, it's going to be sturdy, and it's going to be safe. And then we'll finish the pathways, and then once all that hardscape is finished, I hope that we can work with Mountain Watch and the Mission Blue Nursery and come up with a great game plan for getting the community involved to plant San Bernardino Mountain natives in the park, and empower the folks that really care about the flora on our mountain to take care of the garden. So then our public works guys, you know, maybe just have to look in and say, yeah, you know what, that park's looking great. And we got you know, people from the community who are keeping it nice. We also need to work on the lighting, and we have these old lights that are in there, but they were put in back when the park was reconfigured or configured a certain way, and so we'll need to address that before everything is final. And then you know, we used to lock the gate, and that was something that we've done in the past. I think that is something that we should do at night, just like we lock our bathrooms, so that area is closed off. It's only open during the day, and you know, so that you know, mischievous, you know, folks don't abuse the site in the evening when it's difficult to have a set of eyes on the site. So hopefully that helped you, Dolores and Dennis. And
No, that's very commendable that you're doing all that work. It's going to look great. That wasn't my complaint.
Oh, I know. No, I'm talking about you know, those things about like the rocks and I think we get rid of the material that that where they could throw over. The garbage thing, maybe, we have some signage out there, and maybe when people do their, when they rent out the place, it's on the form. But I mean, of course, if you can't police everything, right? I mean.
Well, perhaps, Mr. Mayor, Cliff, I don't know if you're finished or not.
I'm done. Yes, I'm finished.
Maybe we can boot it over here to staff and see what their plan's going to be.
So we've been talking about this, as you can imagine, quite a bit today, and Councilmember Lentz and I had a nice long conversation about the project as well as some of the issues we're going to need to address long term. But I think in terms of the leasing out of the facility, at least for the short term, we do have a facilities attendant that opens and closes the building. We're going to, from at least in the near term, we will have them stay in the facility or in the back of the facility to police basically any activity of this nature. I apologize to Dolores and her family that absolutely this should not be happening. The city wants to be a good neighbor to the neighbors next to our facilities. And we will take ownership over making sure that the behavior of the people who rent the facilities from us is appropriate. This should never have taken place. So we will have a staff person who sits there during these events. Now, from my understanding from the Recreation Department, we don't really have a whole lot scheduled in terms of events or rentals of the unit or the facility in the near future. So this hopefully won't be recurring a lot, but at least until we can figure out some other long-term plan, we will make sure that there's a staff person there to make sure that people aren't throwing stuff over the fence. And following up with what Cliff has indicated, it's my recollection that we had a lock on that fence at one point in time and that we did lock it. So we've got to kind of talk about both the maintenance of the area as well as the management of lights and the timing of lights as well as the lock and stuff. And so that's a conversation that we need to have, and we'll pursue that and report back to council. So I apologize that this ever happened. It should not have happened, and we'll do our very best to make sure that going forward that events do not get out of control like this. And it was, ironically, at First Communion party, as was indicated, kind of sad that something like that would deteriorate into this sort of an incident, but apparently it did.
Let's look at the last communion.
Yeah. Have we, did the city staff contact the people who were responsible for that party?
Yes, we have been in contact with them today. We do have a deposit that is put in place, and so we'll be reviewing that. Certainly there seems to be, well, I don't want to say what's going to happen with that, but we do have a small deposit that they did deposit.
Can I make a suggestion in regards to the park until it's finished? Just lock it. Might be a liability issue, and then when you want to go in
Way
there.
to really do that until you get the fence.
Well, yeah, we don't have the fence is the problem. We don't have anything to lock.
I guess I should drive it by.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's why I said, I mean, at one time we had a fence there, as you know, and then that is easy to lock. But we don't really have anything to do.
Keep people out.
To keep people out at the moment.
We put something up temporarily.
Perhaps we'll talk with Randy. I don't know. Maybe we can figure something out that would secure it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or at least, give somebody the indication that we don't want them there.
Yeah. Maybe put a sign on the fence too, to stay off the fence.
Yeah. But I think that I'm also sorry it happened. I mean, it's inexcusable, no question about it. I was just thinking that a couple of things we might want to consider, and I really am glad that you're talking about a facilities person, recreation person, I guess, being there. Because clearly, once a person leaves, then the group is on its own, and if it's not a responsible group, then you see what happens. So that's an issue. Whether it's possible to design, the fence in the back there and what you put back there to make it more difficult to access Dolores' yard, I mean, that might be a part of the plan. I know that this has been going on for years, so
it's something maybe we should, think that some kind, because you can't keep some people from doing irresponsible things. They're just going to do it.
Yes.
So you got to make it more difficult. That's all you can do.
One of the things we could do, Ray, is perhaps have some planting that goes beyond your fence, and so that it's higher.
Yeah.
Sometimes, the barrier is a little bit higher. It acts as an impediment to wanting to throw something over.
Okay, so we'll hear about the planning and what is going on and all the other things that you're going to try to do, and we'll do our best to keep these things from happening, and hopefully we really do it right, never happening again. So thanks for coming, you and Dennis and Daughter. Yeah. Okay, Michelle.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I made a little laundry list of the things that I have, and I think that one of the things that I heard a kind of a theme from both Dolores and Dennis is that they've complained about these things in the past and they haven't been addressed. And unfortunately, some of the things on my list are repeats also. And one of them, Bussy reminded me of, which is the lights at the Mission Bluefield when they're on when it's pouring rain, and when they're on when they're not being used, and when they're on for God knows why. And I really wish there was some way we could work on that and get it better coordinated, or maybe have it be coin operated or something. But it really is just appalling about the amount of waste and light pollution when it's not actually being used. This is an ongoing problem.
You brought this up before.
I've brought this up numerous times.
I know, I remember, and it was going to be investigated. And Stuart, what happened with all of that?
The challenge for it is the soccer people in town sign up to use the field in the evening, so we turn the lights on, and then they never show. And they never tell us they're not showing up. So we're not aware when the soccer teams in town actually practice there, because, as I say, they sign up and then they don't show up, and we turn them off as we're supposed to in the evening after their practice is supposed to be over.
So maybe some form of coin-operated or key-operated lighting system where you give them a special token and they can go and turn on the lights when they show up. Because the lights have been on in the pouring rain, they've been on when there's nobody there, and I understand that was the same reason that was given before. And then something on the agenda brought up about the safety systems for the school crossings, and I really want it to be safe for the kids, but sometimes when it's over-engineered, like it is at the corner of Visitation and Mariposa Street, it becomes more of a hazard than a safety thing. And numerous times I have almost hit a kid, and I don't go fast at all because they come out from behind the barrier, but they don't press the light. And so the new barriers kind of actually block visibility of the kids crossing the street, and it makes the kids think they're secure as they go dancing across the street without looking and without pressing the button. And so I just caution us in our new method of doing the safety street crossings that we make sure that it really is an improvement in safety and not just what's recommended, because that one really I think was not a success. And then my next subject is about the weather and the wind and how windy it's been lately. And it has been, we've had a very windy spring, and it's brought up the issue of dust, a lot of dust from a lot of different places. And last Friday, I finally had totally had it with the quarry and called when I went up to the Mission Blue Center for singing class, and dust was just billowing out of the quarry all over the place. And it has been like that off and on for months. And I've called the quarry, and I've left messages for the quarry operator, and this time I also did that, but I also called the police department, because I know that it's Bay Area Quality Management, whatever's responsibility, but it's also the City of Brisbane's responsibility, because we accepted that responsibility when we allowed the permit to be renewed, and that Brisbane was given oversight of the conditions of the permit, like the gravel in the industrial park and the dust coming out of the quarry. And so I would like us to take a higher profile in making sure that the quarry meets their responsibilities and condition for their permit, or force the county to withdraw their permit. Because as we know, that dust is very, very dangerous, and it's cumulative. And I drove home several nights the last month where Brisbane was just like this nasty brown. You could taste it. You could taste the dust. And it wasn't just coming from the quarry. Another huge new source of dust and dust pollution is Golden Gate Lumber, where they've expanded to the other side of Quarry Road that's not paved. And I drove through there the other day on a Sunday afternoon where the wind was really kicking up, and I felt like I was driving through a dust storm in the Sahara. All this massive amount of dust blowing from west to east across Tunnel Road from their open lot, where they drive the fork truck all around and stir up all the dirt, and where they have all the lumber stacked there. And that's a tremendous source of new dust in Brisbane, and also increases the bad air quality that we've had on windy days. And that brings me to the other source of big dust in Brisbane, and that is the piles and piles and piles of dirt at the dirt recycling place. And that I have brought up several times, about how high those piles are getting. And yesterday somebody said, those piles are getting really, really tall. I thought they weren't allowed to get that tall. And I've been given the answer that, well, nobody knows how tall they're supposed to be because they're supposed to be 25 feet, but nobody knows from 25 feet from what height. Well, at this point, they're more than 25 feet from just about anything surrounding them except the top of Candlestick Hill. This is not acceptable to me. And I don't think it's acceptable to other people in the city. We have a permit and an agreement for operating that facility, and I feel that they are not meeting their permit qualifications with having piles of dirt that are, I mean, I don't need to do trigonometry to realize that those piles of dirt are more than 40 feet high and getting taller every day. And then to add insult to injury, I'm on my way to work, and I always get on at Candlestick because it's much more beautiful to see a view of Brisbane and the bay than to, you know, do the whole Bayshore thing with all the people. So I go that way every day. It may take a few minutes longer, but it makes me feel peaceful as I'm beginning my commute. But I didn't feel very peaceful the other day when a big old truck comes pulling out of that facility, and I'm behind him, and he's, you know, going along dirt and dirt everywhere. I'm like, that's funny. He has no license plate. None at all. Anywhere. I took a picture of it. I followed him onto the freeway, and as I passed him, I noticed on the side of his truck all he had was like a little magnetic sign stuck on the side of his truck that said Synergy Product Management. So who is this unidentified truck that is dumping dirt in this dirt recycling facility, and is anybody really paying attention to where that dirt's coming from and what's in it? So I have to question that. I mean, maybe he had a little, you know, permit in his glove box that he showed to somebody with his VIN number, and he's just waiting for his plates. But it sure didn't look that way to me. And it made me feel even more uncomfortable about the oversight of that facility out there. So those are my list of complaints. Now my list of kudos, which is yesterday we had an absolutely amazing event here at City Hall, and thank you, Terry and Clark and Ray, for coming, and I'm sorry, Cliff, that you missed it. But the screening of No Deposit, No Return, and then the screening of the interview of the past City Council, I got so many compliments for us on that, and we had over 90 people here, and the city staff was Lisa and Carolyn and Randy from and the TV station were extremely wonderful in helping prepare everything for that. And my co-committee members, Barbara and Ebel and Sean Sweeney, were great. And I just really very much appreciated being able to host something like that and how educational it was for people. And I want to thank you so much for supporting that. And it was really gratifying, and I think people really learned a lot, and they were curious, and they want to see the full interview tape, and they want to see the documentary, and even with all the technical difficulties we had yesterday, I was really, really proud that we were able to do that. So thank you very, very much for that. So all bitching aside, that was really awesome.
Well, I think we want to thank you and the Open Space and Ecology Committee, because it was an outstanding community event, and you were the
driving first.
Mistress of ceremonies, I guess is the appropriate phrase. You did an excellent job and putting it all together, and all the refreshments, and everything went beautifully, and it was a very interesting event. There's no question about that.
Well, only as good as the total support that I had for it, and I really appreciated it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll get the response to some of these things, but Dennis?
Thank you, Michelle, for bringing this up. It's something I meant to bring up a long time ago. I hear reference to the height of the dirt. I'm referring to the Baylands. And years ago, it was a great, big, tall, good-looking guy that was representing UPC, or whatever it was called then. And he was the guy giving the tours on the Baylands, which I was on with my wife in a small bus. We got off the bus, walking around the creek, and I asked him, how high can you stack the dirt? He did everything under the sun to avoid answering that. I don't give up. And finally, he said 30 feet. Then I said, from what benchmark? And he said, the highway. I said, which highway? Old Bayshore's a highway, in my opinion, or the new highway? He said, Old Bayshore. And I dropped the ball and forgot to ask, where is the benchmark on Old Bayshore? It could be at the bottom of Guadalupe, where the old City Hall was, another 50 feet higher. So in going over the bridge that our engineer Karen was a part of the other day, and looking out, we need I think you call it a story pole in construction. There was a guy up on Thomas that wanted to build something and had to put a storyboard. It's still there, I think. And there's coming over Guadalupe just the other day, there's a tall steel tower. I don't know what it does. And put a flag on it, or from the bridge, an engineer could shoot a transit, some way of a visual that all of us can see if they're sticking to the 30 feet. But we need to know the benchmark of because who's going to know? As far as I'm concerned, they're creating San Bruno Mountain Jr. out there. And so, for what that's worth, some kind of storyboard, it might keep them on their toes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Hansen was his name.
Could we have some explanation of the first, the monitoring of the dust, and then second, the height of the mounds on the Baylands from the recycling operation?
So, with regards to the quarry, I don't know if there's anybody on staff that wants to take that. I mean, to my knowledge, the city has never taken on any responsibility for the permit aspect of that, other than we've always played a role of trying to contact the county and encourage the county to enforce. We've been in contact with the operator up there, and we would, continue to do that. I know Randy's operation has done that many times over the years. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I think I'd love to, sir, if you think I should. So, having just recently had the lovely opportunity to look at the most recent addendum to that surface mining permit that the county issued, there are a number of conditions that were put in there at Brisbane's request. And some of them say that if we call them, because there's so much gravel on the road, you can do that. Off the top of my head, I have Clay's same recollection when it comes to dust, is that they have a duty to control it, but we don't really have a mechanism to enforce it, although I think it was just as recently as, I think it was last Friday. I think, Michelle, it might have been the same day you called, because I had received a call from my field inspector that there was a significant dust cloud, and when I went out there, the operator with a very chagrined look on his face said, oh, because he looked at the Crown Victoria I was driving, that 2006 former police car. He says, oh, yeah, we had a blast scheduled for today, and I knew we should have called you guys. And I said, well, that would explain the loud noise associated with the dust. So those things happen, and we do go up, and I would suggest that EBI, Evans Brothers, Inc., is generally cooperative when you go up and tell them they need to apply more effort to it. I think, like always, we would prefer that they put that effort on it all the time so that we didn't have to go talk to them. I would rather not have to send someone up there or go up there myself and say you need more dust or you need to get a sweeper out there. I'm not sure how much that helps.
Well, I think that we need to call the county and have them enforce it, because they've issued the permit, the conditions we set, and we're not living up to it, and they're not living up to it, and it's affecting the health of the people of Brisbane. And I think that it's an issue. And we shouldn't have to call and tell them to water down. They should be doing it proactively. They know when the wind's coming up. They know when they're going to do a lot of work. It's not like they haven't been doing it for a billion years. So I think that they need to be more proactive, and we need to hold their feet to the fire. It's people's health, children, breathing this dust gives them asthma. It's a bad idea. And I know that that was part of when we said that we would watch this when we defeated the quarry housing issue, and that's exactly what I'm doing, and I expect all of us to do it together. So thank you.
On the mounds on the baylands?
On the dirt piles, Michelle is correct, it is a 25-foot height limit. The problem is there is no datum point that it's tied to. It's not the topography as of when the permit was issued in 2007. It says from the adjoining surface, so as the adjoining surface has risen. But in terms of the contention that it's over 25 feet, currently that's a term of the permit, and we can look in, have an inspection out there and make sure they are living with that 25-foot limit as currently exists. That permit is being, there's a process in place to extend that, which will be subject to Planning Commission review in the future, and again, those would be the kind of issues that would be addressed in a permit extension to have a little more regulatory control over that site.
Yeah, okay. Before we get to the truck, do we have any sense of timing on when this is going to come before the Planning Commission?
I don't have a scheduled date yet. The application is still going through an environmental review, the preparation of an environmental document to support the permit application.
So, a couple months?
Possibly, it could be the end of summer.
Okay.
Fall.
Okay. Just want to get some ballpark.
Yeah, and if we can't pick a height for them to go from, I'll go out and pick one for you.
Yeah, well, I think what we don't have is, as we've said before, we don't have a clear benchmark. And there's no reason why we can't do that in a new permit, I assume. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you have any comment to make on the truck or not. I guess that has to do with who brings stuff there.
Good one, Michelle. I believe it there. I guess the only piece that really surprises me is that normally right at that intersection is where CHP preferentially sets up their moving scale, so I'm really shocked that anybody's doing anything untoward and getting away with it. That doesn't mean he didn't have the plates, but if I understand the operating procedures out there correctly, it's not based on whether the truck has a license plate or not. It's based on whether the job that the truck is coming from has been pre-approved. So the operator at the what's effectively the weigh station is stops the driver and says, which job site are you coming from? And then he's supposed to go through his list and say, okay, yes, that job's been pre-approved or not to come in here. If it's not, he's supposed to turn him away. If it is, he takes him in. So I don't think they're looking at that. That's kind of more of a police or a chippy type function.
I still don't want to encourage
Michelle,
unrestricted trucks on our roads. I mean, that's wrong.
Before we get on that, I'd like to say something on that because we've had issues out there a few years ago and supposedly put some kind of check and balance in place. And is this what we're saying is not working or?
No, sir. I wasn't suggesting that it wasn't working. I was suggesting that these are the current procedures that are supposed to be in place. And I think what I was remarking back to Michelle was that those procedures aren't based on whether the truck has a valid license plate or not. It's based on whether the not necessarily the owner, but the contractor of the site from where the dirt is coming from is pre-registered.
Right.
So I don't think that the people at the yard are not. They're not going to look and see whether the truck has a plate or not. That's not within their realm of control.
Right. They want to know, is this class 2, class 1 fill or whatever it is, whatever it's called, to where it's approved for a clean fill.
And at the truck driver weighmaster interaction, sir, it's really way beyond. It's really, I'm going to say dumbed down to the point of, you're not on my list, you can't dump dirt here. You are on my list, okay, and if they are on their list, that means that the hauler of the dirt has gone through with the management of Bayland Soil Processing, and Bayland Soil Processing has asked him the appropriate question, has asked him for the appropriate testing, and they either are or they aren't approved to dump there.
Right, and there was a check and balance there on whether that operator at the gate is doing his job. And so that was my question of, I guess, how is that working? Because there was somebody that was hired to check that or something?
Yes, John, you want to talk?
We did hire a consultant, an independent consultant, to do an audit of their procedures. They found there were the compliance was fairly high, but there were some procedural, what they considered flaws that, again, as part of this updated permit, we would anticipate tightening up that inspection protocol as part of their future extension of a permit.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Michelle.
I still have to point out that it is not right to have huge dump trucks on our roads that are not registered and not licensed. And that is a danger to the public. And I see these trucks in and out of there every morning. And I really think that making sure that the trucks are licensed and registered should be part of the protocol. And it is on our public streets that we have to maintain. And those roads are just horrible now.
Could you give the name to the chief of police and maybe she can research that out?
Yeah, it was Product Synergy Management is what it said on the side of the truck. I'm sorry I didn't get a picture of the side of the truck because at that point I was on the freeway and that would have been endangerment.
Was it written or was it?
It was on a magnetic sign that sticks on the truck. So it was not painted on the truck. It was not permanent. So there was no license and no permanent name painted on the truck.
Okay, thank you.
Which means there's no way to trace where that dirt really came from, even if that company is on the list.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just wanted to make a quick comment to Michelle. I can surely contact also CHP and their code enforcement. They do their commercial enforcement out there, and give them a heads up as well and make sure that they increase their patrol as well out there. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to the consent calendar. And I have two that I'd like to remove, C and D. Anybody else?
Motion to approve A and B and E.
And E, right. Okay. Motion to approve A, B, and E.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. C is the Sierra Point Lighting Landscape Lighting District, and there are a couple of resolutions that we need to approve. And there are just a couple of questions that I had that before we approve the resolutions, I would appreciate clarification on. The first is the number one, in which we're appointing an attorney, and it proposes to appoint Hal Topple. And I just wanted to make sure that that's what Hal Topple wants, and does it say that?
This was our plan here.
Yeah, that's what it should say, huh? Or his successor. Okay. Okay. All right, but you're okay with that. Okay. So my first question, I just want to make sure you were okay.
Yeah, the problem is you have to have some name.
Okay.
So I think by saying or his successor, what you're really doing is you're designating the city attorney, whoever that might be.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with it. Okay. And then the second question I had has to do with potential projects out there that we've been talking about and whether or not it fits within the Sierra Point Lighting and Landscape District boundaries. And one of the things we've been talking about and came up, I think actually even Carolyn Parker brought it up, was the lighting on Sierra Point Parkway, and particularly as it intersects with Lagoon Road. And my question is that within the the boundaries of the lighting and landscape district? And if so, could we do anything about that in this plan?
Yes and yes, sir. So if you'd like, I think Sherry is trying to pull down our infamous overhead projector so that we can scan, or we'll be able to show you the map
Okay.
of, there are 2 zones that are within the Sierra Point Lighting and Landscaping District. Zone 1 is basically everything that we know and think of as Sierra Point that's within our city boundaries. So that's the map we're going to put up. There is also a Zone 2, which is just a few parcels that are north of the lagoon. So the answer to your question is that the area you were just talking about, yes, is clearly within the district boundaries. It's an area where private parcels are assessed, and the particular type of improvement you talked about is one of the things that could be done with the funds that we receive. Thank you.
Do you have to physically put the map up here?
So could I entertain any other questions, sir, while we're waiting for the electronics to reset
Those are
themselves?
my questions, and I guess whether my colleagues agree that would, because as I recall, we were generating more funds than we were spending recently in the lighting and landscape district.
I don't think that's the case, sir. I thought I saw Stuart twitch and reach for his microphone.
But I mean, the potential for generating funds, maybe that's a better way of putting it. The potential for generating funds was greater than we were spending. And so I thought, well, maybe we should think of some projects that are really pretty good ideas. And this strikes me as a pretty good project. And it certainly fits within the specific responsibilities of the district. So I guess that was really... And if my colleagues agree with me, then, you know, that would be a part of the planning process. And I hope this was a good time to mention it, since this is the beginning of the planning process. At least that's how I see it. Am I right about that?
From a financial perspective, they have run deficits in the past, and they are, as you are correct in saying that we have set rates where that deficit from the past will at some point go away. Currently, they have, looking at the February's financial investment report, they have negative cash of about $300,000. It will take us another couple of years to have that negative go away. So at some point in time, that the rates that we have set will generate an extra cash and eliminate their negative cash balance. So, you know, over the next few years, that would be a possibility.
So we could at least start the planning of this process and put that in, and
yeah, I mean there is enough revenue in the future to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense to my colleagues?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, if at any time, maybe we could talk offline so I can get the details more of exactly what it is you're looking for, and we'll certainly put that into our future planning. Happy to do that.
Okay. I just thought this would be a good time to bring it up.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. As Stu mentioned, we don't have those funds today, but certainly within a couple of years we would.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Carolyn?
Also, if there's any funding that turn onto Tunnel Road, it's very dark. And I think if we could, you know, just have a light there, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. Yeah. Okay, so, Mr. Attorney, we have these, 3 resolutions? Can we pass them as a group, or do we now have to do them individually since I pulled it? Can we just pass item C? Okay, could I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I'll have to say I still don't understand the map they put up, but
It's an eye chart, Terry.
yeah.
I'm sorry, man, it's the best I can do it.
I'm just having a hard time orientating.
You're coming in from the left. Yeah.
Out here, this is the Sierra Point Aquifer around
Okay,
there. Can I take the map off?
sure.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so on item D, I should have noted this myself, but I didn't. But I figured we better fix it before we pass it. And it's on page 3 of the rules and procedures. 1D. This was something we added last time. Actually, it was Clark's idea, I think, where we look at percentages of missed meetings during the whole year. But I think it should say 20% or more. Right?
And we don't need to reintroduce that, do we?
No, I don't think so. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we need
Motion to approve.
D, which is the resolution, and the change in updating on the ordinance that deals with parks and recreation.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We got it. Thank you. Okay, now we go to new business, and we've got a different order here. And so the first thing under new business is the South San Francisco Scavengers annual rate increase. Maria.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. What I have for you is the proposed annual rate increase from South San Francisco Scavengers Company, our solid waste removal service company. To give you some background with them, we currently hold a franchise agreement. The City of Brisbane currently holds a franchise agreement with South San Francisco Scavengers. This agreement was approved in March 1st, 1999, and currently is scheduled to go through February 28th, 2014. Under this agreement, not only does it include our regular weekly residential and commercial solid waste removal services, but also provides for other services such as our annual citywide cleanup, yard waste cleanup, management of our annual diversion reports to Cal Recycle, assistance in implementing new mandates such as the AB 341 mandatory commercial recycling law, and other recycling services. To also give you some background on what South San Francisco Scavenger does for us, per Assembly Bill 939, the city is required to have a diversion rate of 50%, meaning that discarded material needs to be sorted so that reusable and or recycling material can be diverted from the waste stream. South San Francisco Scavengers Services has allowed the city to reach a diversion rate of 72% in 2009, 79% in 2010, and 80% in 2011. We're currently collecting the information right now so that we can prepare our 2012 report. There's basically two ways that rate increases occur under our current franchise agreement. The first one, under Section 6.2 of our franchise agreement, provides for an adjustment of 80% of the change in the February CPI from the previous year. That is, if the CPI has increased during the previous year by 3%, the rate would increase by 2.4%. The second method in which rate increases occur is that we do a survey every 3 years of 32 Bay Area cities, which we have agreed upon in the franchise agreement, and Brisbane rates are set to be at 90.25% of the average rates of those 32 cities for 5 benchmark categories. The most recent basket survey that we did was performed last year. At that time, the subcommittee met with representatives of scavengers and negotiated having the increases equal between the residential and commercial multifamily can rates. So basically for our agreement, the agreement provides that scavengers submit a rate increase request to us by March 31st, which they did, and provided us their increase on March 29, 2013. I regret that the information was not posted with the staff report on online. I have provided a copy for you, which you have in front of you right now, that has the full information regarding the proposed rate increases. Basically, the proposed rate increase for this year is based on their calculation of, as I mentioned, of 80% of the February CPI change year to year, and comes out to a 1.91% increase that they are proposing. We have reviewed the proposed rates, and they appear to be in line with what is permitted under franchise agreement. This increase would be the last scheduled increase in the current franchise agreement at this time. And the agreement also provides that the city act on the rate increase notice of intent by June 30th. Staff is recommending approval of these rates to be effective July 1st, 2013. Based on these rates, the increase for the standard 32-gallon residential can would be about 46 cents per month, or an additional $5.52 for the year for solid waste removal services. For commercial and multifamily 2-yard bins, the increase would be approximately $4.44 per month, or $53.28 per year. We do have representatives here from South San Francisco Scavengers, including Doug Button, CEO, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think we need a legal determination, Mr. Attorney. The specific rate schedule was not included in the packet. How does that affect our ability to approve the rate increase this evening?
It was not in the packet. Where is it?
What was not in the packet was...
I don't think the issue is approving the rate increase because it's formulaic and it's all agreed to, but there is a legal issue.
This was in there.
That was in there, but I think this was not.
Okay. Well, the packet did include the staff report, which indicated the amount of the percentage of the increase.
Right.
So what was not was kind of the breakdown showing the detail of how those percentages are applied.
Right.
I think anyone who really had an interest in determining what the rates were, this would give them the information they need, and they could always either calculate or contact staff to get more detail. But I guess I'd have to say the basic amount of the increase was in the packet. So I think the council can go forward with it. Unless you're uncomfortable in doing that, but
well, that's
I do think there was notice of how much of an increase was proposed to be made.
Okay.
You simply didn't have all of that calculated out in the table.
Right.
The basic amount was set forth.
Yeah, and the Solid Waste Committee, of course, recommended this.
Mm-hmm.
So at least two of us are very familiar with the rate schedule.
But the other thing to keep in mind also is that this is not a public hearing item. I mean, certainly the public can comment on it, but it's not the type of thing that required notice and publication and all of that.
Okay.
It's a contractual adjustment.
Okay.
So in that sense, certainly anyone who wanted to address the issue would have access to that information.
Okay.
But I think the basic information was there.
Okay. All right. Colleagues, I'm a member of the audience, and I assume that South San Francisco Scott might want to say something, but any comments?
Well, just, it would be going, 30, or the standard can would be going from 71.70 to 73.08, which is an increase of $1.38 over 3 months. And so it's really what the increase will be is $1.38 per quarter for a residential can. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that's associated with that, multi-family can, a 2-yard bin, debris box, all that, and commercial cans.
What's the 96 gallon? Yeah, well, is it across the board 1.91% for everything? Yeah. But it's the same rating. We're comfortable with going ahead? I mean, that's the question, I guess.
Yeah, we want to hear from the public.
Yeah, right? No, I just want to make sure that...
I don't have any questions.
Okay, all right.
Stop.
Okay. Do the South San Francisco Scavengers, anyone like to say anything? No? All right.
Dennis is raising his
Dennis,
hand.
yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had your glasses off. I wasn't sure if you were spotting.
Yeah, come on up, Dennis. Yeah.
I really don't know if I want to speak now. If that's the scavenger fellas to my left. So
There's three of them, too.
If I end up missing, looking the landfill. The good old days when I grew up in San Francisco. But I do have a serious note, and I brought it up when Fred Smith was to my right. So however many years ago, the scavengers came up. And my question was, why we don't have competitive bids back then? And I'm not hearing it now. And you may all be aware in the paper there's been a lot of municipalities getting competitive bids. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why. This was a principle I had in my business. And you know what really set me off on this issue is I wanted to rent a debris box. And I was informed I cannot rent a debris box except from South City Scavengers. I couldn't believe it, man. Talk about a monopoly. So I'm sorry, gentlemen, but I think you sitting up there and everyone to my right has a responsibility to at least research it. I don't know if Daly City, Service, Coleman, Broadmoor, San Francisco's in our backyard, the shortest distance between 2 points and fuel use and pollution and all the rest. Maybe we can't go there because it has to be San Mateo. But I just feel really bad, particularly I brought it up once I can remember Fred, and I'm sure I brought it up before. So I'd like an answer. Because unless I read it wrong on the agenda, my little iPad Touch, it said you have the power tonight to extend the agreement for 10 years. And I don't see it on this thing that's out in the lobby. So I kind of like an answer to that from somebody.
I'll give it a whirl, but Hal, you want to do it?
Well, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, okay.
The simple answer is that we're not awarding a new contract, Dennis. Well, what we're doing, there was a franchise awarded to South San Francisco Scavenger having a term of years. We are still within that term. Now, it will expire shortly, but this is not a renewal. This is not an award of a new contract. It is a rate adjustment that's allowed by the existing contract.
Right.
That contract also contains a mathematical formula as to how that adjustment is to be made, which essentially is based upon a comparison of other rates charged in other communities. So the exercise tonight is just going through the numbers to make sure that it's consistent with the existing contract, not to go out to bid for a new contract. That may come later, but right now we're still dealing with the same agreement.
Okay. That got you up, huh?
Well, good evening. My name is Doug Button, President of South City Scavengers. Just a comment for Dennis. This, as you know, is a contract that has a term to it. One of the things you heard tonight from Maria was that there's two ways to adjust rates. One is an annual cost of living, and every third year we kind of mark it to a basket of 32 cities. That, in a sense, is a way of going to bid without going to bid. Our contract ties us to 10% lower than the average rates around us, no matter what our costs are, no matter what profit we have, no matter what losses we have. Our rates are set 10% lower than anywhere around here. For example, we're $120 less than San Francisco for the same size can for the same services per year. That's significant, and you guys negotiated that contract, and every 3 years we go out and check it, and yes, there's been adjustments, but a lot of the other communities are getting higher rate increases doing this, and it's all so they can achieve diversion under 939, AB 939. You heard tonight that in 2011 we hit 80% diversion. Your rates are 10% lower than everybody else's. You're at 80% diversion. By the end of this year, we're planning to put in an anaerobic digestion facility where we want to go to weekly service for yard waste and add your home and restaurant food waste to the yard container. We're going to take that, put it in a closed vessel We're going to let it ferment, which is going to extrude methane. We're going to collect that methane, clean it, compress it, run the trucks that are going to pick up the stuff in Brisbane off of the methane we make from your own food. That compost that also comes out 30 days later at the end is then going to be taken off site, dried, packaged, and sold back to nurseries and to residents and whatever to use. It's kind of a closed loop system, and you're getting that, you didn't go to bed, but you're getting that by going out and checking what everybody else is doing, and we're, like I said, we're meeting the mandates that are out there, and that's all we're here to do. So, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Glad you got up and explained that. Okay, so I guess the motion is to approve the annual rate increase for the South San Francisco Scavengers.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're done.
Dennis, did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so we move on
to B.
B, which is the road projects, right?
Correct. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, the item before you is the request for authorization to obtain bids and award contracts for 3 complete streets projects, if you will. The rehabilitation of segments of Bayshore Boulevard, having the lowest and that being the worst pavement condition index, the repair of sidewalk trip hazards throughout the city, and the retrofit of safety systems at 2 significant school crossings. Upon allocation by the California Transportation Commission, we'll receive $147,000, which, based upon the lowest responsive bids, will be up to 50% of all of those construction costs for those projects. The funds were received in exchange with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. The Transportation Authority was willing to utilize our federal surface transportation funds, and in exchange we received 20% more money than we would have with a less burdensome delivery process, which the city agreed to via the resolution adopted by council in August of last year. Approval of the item before you will allow us to rehabilitate a major roadway, repair all sidewalk trip hazards, for which in the past years we've only been able to address small portions, and make 2 school crossings safer. Matching funds must come from Measure A Local Streets and Roads funds, of which the city has at least $300,000 available. The unusual part of the staff report is the request to allow the city manager to award the contracts for each of the 3 projects upon allocation by the California Transportation Commission, and provided the successful low bid in each case doesn't exceed 115% of the engineer's estimates. The reason for this request is that although the council is in recess in July, we would like to stay ahead of funding deadlines and construct these projects in the summer when school is not in session rather than in the fall. Is there any more detail I can provide? Any questions?
Well, we'll need to go through each one, right? Each of the projects. Explain exactly where each one is and so forth.
Okay. The Bayshore Boulevard rehabilitation is the resurfacing of the travel lanes, the traffic lanes, from Geneva Avenue in the southbound direction, south to Industrial Way, and also in the southbound direction from the southern city limits to 1,000 feet north. And that's the amount we could cover with the engineer's estimate of $120,000, and those have the lowest pavement condition index based upon the consultant that does the survey for us and certifies our database every 2 years. The second project is the repair of sidewalk trip hazards. The adopted standard is a 1/4-inch differential is required to be repaired, and we've identified everything in the residential and commercial areas that meet those. We're also planning to install root barriers where trees have lifted the sidewalk so that we don't have to go back to the same spots again and again. And that engineer's estimate is $120,000 for all of those. And the third project is to retrofit the safety systems that were installed under the Safe Routes to School funding back in the mid-2000s. We've put in pavement flashers that haven't survived the test of time, so we are going to put some new ones in at Visitation in Mariposa, and we elected not to make any significant changes there because it was a pretty involved process to basically put in any improvements there and not change the aesthetics along Visitation. But at the other crossing is San Bruno Avenue and Santa Clara Street, and we are going to install a new rapid flashing beacon that is similar to the in-pavement flashers. A push button is pressed when someone wants to cross the street, and at the street crossing sign, a beacon will flash back and forth quickly and let vehicular traffic know that someone is going to enter the crosswalk there.
Is that a road-embedded flasher, or is this up at eye level?
It's at eye level on San Bruno and Santa Clara.
Yeah, because I was reading on the plans where you're actually removing those spot sensors and then you're going to pave over it. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And that's proven to be more effective? Because, I mean, it's different than Visitation, and I know we just had a complaint earlier about Visitation.
It's kind of the state of the art. That's what people are going to with these rapid reflecting flashing beacons. They're easier to maintain, and they have good visibility, and they're kind of the item of choice. Again, on Visitation, we didn't want to put something so drastically different out there in the business district, so we elected not to place them at that location.
Okay.
So we're still kind of testing them at this spot.
So if I can jump in and, with Karen just for a moment, you may recall that when we originally did Visitation, we had more eye-level, high visibility, advanced warning signs there, and that received a really negative response from the community, so we actually took some of those signs down. So that certainly influenced the decision that we were making here. And also, just as a reference, the complaint that we heard earlier this evening was directed at the safety system, but it was really focused on the kids not pushing the button. And I think, as Mayor Miller mentioned earlier, there's some things you just can't stop people from doing, and we can't force the kids to push the buttons, although I would think that certainly if that were occurring frequently enough and we alerted the police department, I think the police department might stand out there for a few mornings every now and then and gently remind the kids to do that, and that would happen.
Actually, the afternoons, you got a crossing guard in the morning, so, right?
At Visitation?
No,
up at the school.
This at Visitation, I think, is where the comment was.
Yep. I personally was someone who complained a lot about the original crossing on Visitation that went in. I thought it was overkill, so to speak, and I hate to use that word. It's probably not appropriate for a crosswalk, but I think it was over-designed and but I'm glad to see that some changes were made, but I know that we've had some complaints from residents that are up by the school about the current speed signs and flashing lights and the boxes that are in front of their homes that have caused them some angst. And I would like to make sure that what we're putting in there is not going to be intrusive to the homeowners that are there. I know they want people to slow down, but I don't have a real good idea of what this is going to be like for to the ambiance of the neighborhood. I mean, if it's effective, it's a good thing, but I want to make sure that we're not adding another problem to their aesthetics in front of their homes.
Both of these devices are going in right at the crosswalk, so one of them is in front of the school and one of them is at the intersection, not directly in front of someone's home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to see that we're going to start to fix those sidewalks in town. I know that's been a major, hazard obstacle for a lot of kids and parents, and so that's great that we're doing it. How many total? I mean, I looked at that list. I mean, it's on the worksheet, but I didn't get a number of how many that would be.
I think the number is 137.
137. Wow. In the funding, so will you get half the money from the SLPP exchange funds, and then the other half will be from the Measure A money from the county? So this is that we'll put into these projects that won't come from the general fund.
That's correct.
That's great. All right. Well, good work. Capturing those dollars and putting them to good use. I know that we've been wanting to do the sidewalks, for example, for a long time, but sometimes you have to wait until you can get that money. So, good job.
Well, I think with this, usually we have an annual maintenance program that we've been doing on the streets, and this year we're doing sidewalks instead of doing the paving. I think we've got a pretty good handle on here. Is that correct, or?
We still have funds left over to do paving projects.
Oh, we do? Okay.
We've been getting this ready and trying to keep it on schedule, but we should be able to do some later in the construction season.
Oh, okay.
On that note, the pavement in front of, on Bayshore near the trailer park, I've had residents there complain about the way the slurry seal has been done, crosswise, and that they hear the trucks bouncing and pounding the pavement there. Is that portion of Bayshore on our watch list for resurfacing that portion of Bayshore? Do you know? Sorry to throw it off topic to you.
Yeah, I would be guessing to tell you what its pavement condition is right at this time, and I wasn't aware of the particular concern, so
okay,
we can look at it.
Look at it. It wasn't on topic, so I apologize for not asking it prior.
Dennis.
In regards to the flashing lights, I lived on Santa Clara in Visitation for quite a few years, and when those were installed, the flashing lights in the street, I went over to push the button and it spoke in 2 languages. And I thought at the time, this is discrimination. There's 27 languages in the United States census, so you could be there all day waiting for your language to come through. But do we need a voice box? Because on a nice night, the window's open, I was probably 60 feet from it. It's disturbing. And what if you're deaf? So I don't know the need for the voice box. And if you haven't done it, push the button and hear it. So the lights are great, and I'm glad the city and the engineer have considered lowering them, because they are a nuisance and they become, you don't even notice them, I'm sure. But just for what it's worth, why bother with a voice box? I don't see where it does any good, personally. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Got an answer to that?
So I feel Dennis's pain. I happen to live with an adult family member who thinks it's really entertaining to stand at the crosswalks where it says walk and likes to push him, and so it says wah 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 wah. Much to the annoyance of everybody around them, but I don't let my wife do that late at night. I love you, honey. I hope you're not watching. And I swear to you, I couldn't make this stuff up, sir. I would never be a good fictional writer. This is my life. But the question as to, are they mandatory? No. They are not mandatory. They are currently considered best practices to have those walking signs. We aren't at the point yet where the Americans with Disabilities Act is requiring the voice activation, but certainly for the people who are hard of sight, it's recommended in that case. Now, I recognize that we may not have people, but that's not a terribly good argument. Certainly the folks who are disabled will say, and the people who are responsible for the ADA will say, well, yeah, but if there's one person who needs that additional safety measure so they can safely cross the street, it should be there. So the default of that is that when you buy these new devices, they come with the voices. And your only choice is how many languages do you want sometimes. And I think basically what we're getting is English and Spanish. I don't know what walk is in Spanish. I think my wife would have a lot of fun with that, I suspect, as well. So.
And is this something that if the voices are annoying to the residents that live nearby, that the sound carries, that we can say this isn't working for our community and turn her off?
I'm going to speculate and say yes, ma'am. Because if it gets to the point where we hear a complaint and it's not an ADA mandate, then sure, we have no problem taking it out. The only reason I would recommend against it would be if the law had changed and ADA said, no, you have to have the voice commands as well. Then certainly we'd probably want to keep it.
I have a couple of quick comments. I was pleased to see these and that we were able to take advantage of what you set up last August. The Bayshore improvements seem like, okay, those are the places that need it. It's a lot of sidewalk repairs. A lot of people will be happy when that's done. I noticed that one of them was a complaint that I've just recently received from several people. The one at Monarch and Mission Blue, which I guess is significant. And I noticed that was on here. Noticed it was a long distance that had to be repaired too, because I guess of tree damage and so forth. So I was pleased by that. On the third one, the visitation in Mariposa, the map, at least by my looking at it, did not show the nodes. I don't know whether I'm looking at the map incorrectly or not, but it doesn't seem to show the nodes. And I guess my question is, are they going to stay? Is that considered a positive safety thing or not? I guess that's because that's one of the things that some people have complained about.
Yes, the intent is to leave those there, and the current convention and wisdom is that the pedestrians have less exposure to cars when they have that bulb out and an island, a shorter distance that they have to cross where they're actually at odds with a car passing on the street.
Yeah, well, I guess people have different sense of, what works to protect people, I suppose. Because one of the things that happens at that intersection is that for a long time I was going to that intersection quite often, and it's extremely difficult to get a line sight as to when it's safe to cross if you're coming from Mariposa. Very difficult. Part of that has to do, of course, with the way our parking method. And when you have a huge, big, solid van or truck parked right on the corner, I mean, you just can't see until you're really out in the middle of the street. Which is one of the reasons that 2 years ago I had suggested that maybe the thing to do there was to put a stop sign, and I know that our public works engineer wasn't too happy with that, didn't think it was going to work, but I guess I just wanted to raise that issue again, even though I know it's not a part of this project, or maybe that's something that could be studied by the Complete Straight Safety Committee, but we have a stop sign at the corner of San Bruno and Santa Clara, and why wouldn't we also have a stop sign that's just my own thinking, at the corner of Visitation and Mariposa.
Yes, sir, I get that, and you're one of the drivers we love, because I think you pull up to a stop sign and you stop. You don't roll through it, you pay attention to it. The problem we have is there's so many drivers that roll stops periodically. I know the police have a big public relations campaign they're doing right now, trying to remind people of it, and they've remarked in it that so many of the people they pull over didn't even realize they rolled it. It's just become second nature, and what a lot of the studies have found is that when you put excessive stop signs in to do something other than their intended purpose, and in this case it's just to make it slightly safer for a pedestrian, is we find that we have a couple of things that people use the infamous California stop more frequently, and they also speed spike, which is just as different, because now they're annoyed, so they really feel like they have to hit the throttle. But I think there is a solution, and I think we'd be happy to look at it, and I think Karen and Commander Meisner would be delighted to look at it in the Safe Streets or the Complete Streets Committee. I think that one of the things we need to do is to reconsider some of the parking there. And I don't think we need to consider all of the parking. It's just a matter of when you start to have all of the uphill parking that is diagonal as you're looking at it, it really starts to create those sightline problems. And there's at one of the intersections where we don't have that, where we have the parking spot closest to the curb is actually parallel there. And if you stand there or if you've seated there, because I've heard this complaint a number of times from drivers as well, who are, up at a reasonable height as well, that they can't see. So I think that's something we'd certainly like to look at. I'm really glad someone other than staff brought up taking out a parking space, because you know how contentious that and challenging that can be.
Okay. Thank you. Are we prepared to approve this plans and specifications?
I'm good.
Rehabilitation projects? Is that a good way to put it?
I'm happy to see. I just wish we could do all of Bayshore. I know we've been doing a little bit through the years, and you guys been doing a great job on managing what you can do, but it'd sure be nice to be able to do the whole thing, because certainly it needs it, but it's good to see you at least doing the worst parts of it, and I do appreciate that. So, I'd make a motion to approve item B, which is the plans for Bayshore, fixing all the sidewalks and the
school crossings.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. Good work. The next item is going to be a while, and I was wondering if my colleagues would mind taking a little break before we do that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good.